Member Abdelgawad.
Here.
Councilmember Barber.
Present.
Councilmember Berenson.
Present.
Councilmember Burke.
Present.
Councilmember Holman absent. Councilmember Kellogg.
Present.
Councilmember Moorhead absent. Councilmember Townsend.
Present.
Mayor Turnbow.
Present. Could we all please rise and stand and join me in the Pledge of Allegiance? I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. Let the record reflect that Mr. Holman is present, please. And also, this is a time in our agenda for proclamations. It is indeed my honor tonight to issue this proclamation to a member of the government of Raymore. Can I please have Mr. Captain Wilson step forward? I'm going to read the proclamation out loud here and embarrass you as much as I can.
No, because my head will turn red.
Whereas Captain Jim Wilson fully planned and executed the Raymore Police Department Shop with a Cop program and has organized 2 very special events which have had a tremendous positive impact on our community. And whereas Captain Wilson spent months preparing and orchestrating every detail of the Shop with a Cop program, including the coordination of numerous staff volunteers for the 2017 event, which was held at Centerview and the Raymore Walmart on December the 12th. And whereas the Raymore Shop with a Cop program celebrated its 2nd year with a 200% increase in the number of children participating between year 1 and year 2, due solely to the outstanding efforts of Captain Wilson. And whereas Captain Wilson sought and received tremendous support from local businesses, Walmart, Sam's Club, Casey's, Mod Pizza, and Apple Bus, who provided dinner, entertainment, and transportation for the children and their families. And whereas although Captain Wilson's contribution to the success of this program is immeasurable, the significance to the children who participated could be measured by the joy on their faces. Now therefore I, Christopher P. Turnbow, Mayor of the City of Raymore, do hereby express appreciation and gratitude to Captain Jim Wilson for being a champion of the Raymore Police Department Shop with a Cop program and for his unfaltering commitment to the citizens of our community, in witness whereof I have hereunto set my hand and caused the seal of the City of Raymore to be affixed this 8th day of January 2018. Congratulations. You want to say something about the program?
Sure. If I could just take a couple minutes. I thought I was going to talk about accident reports tonight, but I appreciate this very much, but this is really everybody all the volunteers that came in and helped, all the officers that came and helped and give of their time. The kids did enjoy it very much, and we look forward to doing it again next year. And I can't do it without all the help from the officers and the community. So thank you.
Thank you, Jim. Appreciate it. Let the staff be seated. Next item is personal appearances. There are none listed tonight, so we'll move into staff reports. Mr. Fearborn.
Thank you, Your Honor. I would ask Mr. Carteret to make a report for the Community Development Department this evening.
Thank you, sir. A couple of items. I want to start with a brief recap on construction activity for the calendar year 2017. It was a very good year for issuance of permit and development activity in Raymore. In 2017, we closed with a total of 282 permits for new dwelling units. So that's about a 25% increase over 2017 or 2016, which was a very good year. So we're very happy with that. When we looked at the numbers for total valuation, so this would be the market value of the new homes being built, we actually surpassed $53 million in valuation for new home construction. So that again was more than we had in 2016. So very positive year for that. Excited, hope that continues. And then the second item, next meeting of our Planning Commission is scheduled for February 6th. The commission will have 2 items on their agenda. They'll consider the 6th phase of the Edgewater and Creekmore subdivision. Actually going to be one of their larger phases. I believe there's 53 lots proposed in the next phase of Edgewater, so it'll be a continuation of that development. And the second item, the commission will discuss proposed amendments that are needed to our sign code. If you recall, it was about a year ago when staff and the city attorney, Mr. Zur, spoke at a work session regarding this topic. There was a Supreme Court case coming out of Arizona regarding the issue of content-neutral signage. So it's something that all communities across the country have to look at modifying some of the language regarding how we regulate temporary signs. So we need to bring that forward as a formal amendment. We need to finalize that discussion. So we're bringing that forward in February just for informal discussion. Eventually it will come to you as an amendment to the code once we settle on all the code language. But that's what we have scheduled for our February meeting. And that should conclude staff report.
Any questions of staff? Thank you, sir. Mr. Fearborn.
Thank you, Mr. Carteret. I would ask Chief Zimmerman to make a report for police emergency management.
Thank you, Mr. Fearborn. If you all would indulge me just for a second, I want to embarrass Captain Wilson one more time because he knows I always like to get the last word. Well, in typical fashion, Captain Wilson, who never takes complete credit for anything and always gives the credit to all the folks around him, I just wanted to take a moment to share with the council that people like Captain Wilson, who have to work for people like me and for the mayor, the former chief, have ideas brought to them all of the time, and they have to filter through the ideas that their chiefs lay upon them, and what will work and what won't work, and how do they make it work, how do they make those ideas operational. And so a couple of years ago, when I had the opportunity to participate in the Shop with a Cop program down in Harrisonville, I came back all aflutter with how wonderful a program this was, and laid that on Captain Wilson to make this work. You know, I have a really good idea, and then I'll just move on and go do something else while you figure out a way to make this wonderful program work, which he did. And folks like that, and I haven't had the opportunity many times in my almost 40-year career to work with someone who is so committed to making those things a reality. And so, you know, when you're fortunate enough in a position like mine to have somebody who can make those things come true, those great ideas that you see other people accomplishing in other places, and he will take that information, he will make it come true. It is truly a pleasure to work with someone like Captain Wilson. What he is getting here from me right now is all of the ribbons that he should have gotten all these years in his career for things like hostage negotiation and SWAT, special unit citations and drug task forces and things like that. And then this ribbon of commendation for the Shop with a Cop program, which is bringing a highly creditable act that brings great acclaim to the department or to the city. So to add to all of your other ribbons, here is your commendation as well.
Thank you, Chief.
And now I'm not going to make him get up and talk about accidents. As we had talked about months ago, that it would be a good idea, I believe we talked about this in a work session, that it would be a good idea for us to, in the first regular meeting of the year, to do a comparison of accidents. Top 5 is usually, intersections is usually what we compare from year to year. So what I've done tonight is compared 16 to 17, and just have, you know, a few numbers, and I'm certainly, you know, happy, and some percentages and some contributing factors as well, but certainly happy to answer any questions above and beyond the raw numbers. Probably not surprising to anyone that 58 Highway in Kentucky and 58 Highway and Dean were number 1 and number 2 in 16, and then flip-flopped in 17. And so Dean was number 1 and Kentucky was number 2, so they just traded places. And then every other accident location from 16 to 17 remained the same, although 58 Highway and Johnston actually had fewer accidents from the previous year, but moved up from number 6 to number 5. So it actually made the list in 17, and it had not. in 16. The really good news is, with all of these numbers, and again, I have raw numbers for all of those locations, but the really good news is that overall, our accidents between 16 and 17 actually dropped 32. 32 total accidents, and that's citywide, not in those top 5 locations, for almost a 13.5% decrease in accidents. Those locations that I mentioned, the Dean and Kentucky locations, they stayed fairly constant. As I said, they just flip-flopped from one year to the next, and the accidents didn't raise significantly. But I will say that from 16 to 17, the accidents in that corridor, Dean and Kentucky, increased from 33 to 36. So only 3 accidents, considering the fact that, you know, we've opened the marketplace. The increase in the volume of traffic is significant in that area, and so 3 additional accidents. We don't like any, but actually that's a fairly good number when you consider all of the increase in traffic that has occurred in that area. Not surprising, probably to anyone, is that fail to yield and driver inattention are fairly significant causative factors there. Someone fails to yield coming out of a business or coming out of a side street. Also, it's sort of difficult to quantify sometimes because driver inattention can also be a lane change. They don't realize, and they're making a change of lane into someone else's path. Of course, it won't surprise anyone that the difficulty in this area is that it's not conducive to enforcement. There's no place to sit. There's no place to you know, run radar or watch for people running lights or, you know, any of those types of things. And so our presence in that area, obviously visibility, you know, we hope helps, but we didn't see a significant decrease in that area. So our 13.5% decrease is obviously in other areas of the city where enforcement is much easier for us to do. So I'm happy to answer any questions about any of that. But you know, plan on doing that going forward. And I'm happy to share when we have other type of enforcement activities that we will do. I will say, you know, if you take credit for the good stuff, you've got to take the blame for the bad stuff. So if the accidents go back up, obviously, but we did do a driver's training. We actually did a couple of driver's trainings during the year this year, and we utilized Mr. Icky and his staff, social media, when we were talking about summer safety tips and, you know, watch out for the kids when they got out of school. So, you know, anything that works, helping people be more aware of their surroundings and pay attention to, you know, increases in traffic and things like that, you know, we hope and will continue to do. We hope will make a difference.
Chief, you told us which ones were 1, 2, and 5. What were 3 and 4?
16 or 17? Which year do you want?
Just this past year, 17.
Dean was 1, Kentucky was 2, 58 in Fox Ridge was number 3, okay. Dean and Lucy Webb was 4, and 58 in Johnston was number 5.
Okay, thank you. Anybody else have any questions? Mr. Holman.
Thank you, sir. More of a comment. Chief, thank you. Excellent report. I'm the one that requested that you provide that information to us, and I certainly found it valuable. I think that we'll see a really interesting comparison 6 months over 6 months or year over year once we do the completion of the GEO bond project with the realignment of Kentucky Avenue and the engineering implementations that will go in at both of those, the existing location as well as a new location. I have a feeling that's going to drop off the radar eventually once we do that. So there were a number of benefits in that GEO bond project, one of which was certainly economic development for the future, but the biggest one was safety. And so I think that'll be something that we and everybody else watching will be able to see the impact of that project just straight away from the numbers, if nothing else. So thank you very much. It's very informative.
Thank you.
Mr. Delgado.
Thank you. And I like numbers, maybe. I'm curious how many accidents were at each of those top 5 intersections?
In 17 this year. 58 in Dean was 21. 58 in Kentucky was 15. 58 in Fox Ridge was 10. Dean and Lucy Webb was 9. And 58 Highway in Johnston was also 9.
Thank you. Mr. Barber.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Just curious, do you have any thought or comments on what caused the reduction? And this is another question. Do you keep track of inclement weather accidents? So, the treatment of our streets, or when the weather's, we've had some bad winters, does that factor in as well?
Well, it absolutely factors in, and when we go back and look at causative factors, obviously one of the things that we look at is when the speed is too fast for the conditions, which were 3% of the accidents in both years, in which individuals were obviously traveling too fast when the roads were slick and things like that. So we are paying very close attention to those times when individuals should not be operating in the manner in which they are.
Mr. Kellogg.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Would we be able to get a copy of your report there?
Absolutely.
I'd appreciate that. There's some interesting things in there that I don't want to drag this meeting out, but I'd really like to have some of that information and then follow-up questions privately. So thank you.
Thanks. Anyone else? If not, Mr. Fearborn. Thanks, Chief.
Thank you, Chief. Would like to start here by giving the council just a very quick summary update on the new trash service that is in place as of last week. So as of approximately 2 p.m. on Saturday, all of the pickups were complete except for obviously the normal misses that would go with any kind of service like this. But we saw all of the areas at least addressed. All of the Christmas trees that were left out were picked up by approximately 3 p.m. yesterday. Christmas trees will again be picked up on both normal pickup days, Wednesday and Thursday, and then they'll be back out again on Friday if there's any stragglers for Christmas trees. The WCA bins that have not been picked up will be picked up tomorrow. We are asking folks who have put those up next to their garages over time if they could remember to bring those out, set them at the curb. Our people are a little bit hesitant to start walking up somebody's driveway and get too close to the house to get those back out.
And set them out empty, please.
Yeah, and please set them out empty. Very good point, sir. All Jim's disposal carts have been delivered, and according to Railroad Pacific's master list, if people have not gotten carts or have been missed, we are asking them to give us a call, and we can put together one final list to get to Rarig and Jim's disposal to get that particular item taken care of. But we really believe that even at this point, the miss list is down to a handful. We sent them a list of a couple of dozen, and they were able to show us from entering on their little register that those had been delivered either late Saturday or Sunday, and those were from phone calls coming in late Friday night and into Saturday morning. So we really think that they've probably hit just about every place, unless it is just, again, like I say, the normal miss. Carts, unfortunately, were accidentally delivered to Morning View and Greenway Villas, and the Morning View residents were nice enough to take them out of their driveways and walk them actually down to the common area so it would be easier for Rarig to pick those up. And so we thanked them greatly, and I know Rarig was really appreciative. Rarig actually was there this evening. Mr. Icky just reported to me during Captain Wilson's presentation that, in fact, the Morning View carts have been picked up. So there simply remain the Greenway Villas to get up. This one's a little bit confusing, so I'll try to explain it. Apparently, in the Northland, where Jim's Disposal also works, in addition to Beltman here, Jim's Disposal is a subcontractor for about half of those locations to WCA, our former provider. And WCA is the subcontractor to Jim's for the other half of those locations. And I don't even want to go there, but it's just kind of odd and is unique to the industry that they subcontract with each other. So a lot of our residents may have noticed that the leftovers on Saturday morning, the areas that were not hit, those were actually picked up by WCA acting as a subcontractor to Jim's Disposal. because that was the day that normally WCA would be acting as their subcontractor up in the Northland, picking up for Jim's Disposal. He simply switched with them. He went up there because he knew the routes, and he knew that WCA, those drivers that he's using up there, knew the routes down here quicker. And so because he was way behind down here, he put them on it so that we could get all those cleaned up by 2 o'clock on Saturday. So it was not, some folks were wondering, well, did they get so far behind that the city of Raymore called them in? No, they called the WCA car, and Chuck Bird gave me a call very late on Friday night to let me know, or ask permission to go ahead and do that. And it was, at that point, it was get them picked up. So whatever it took. So we just wanted to explain that to folks who were wondering. The challenges that we had last week started with the fact that WCA delayed pickup. They had that one-day delay. It was a Christmas pickup. One day turned into actually 4 days to get the WCA items picked up, and then they were missing items, and that's what led to a whole lot of the WCA carts being left in driveways full. People were filling their WCA carts at that point rather than filling Jim's Disposal carts, or if they didn't have Jim's Disposal carts, and Jim's mechanism can't pick up a WCA 85 cart. So that was one of the first challenges that we had. The fact that carts were not in place in all locations led to hand throwing a whole lot of trash during the first week. Again, that problem hopefully is behind us. Frigid temperatures slowed both cart delivery and pickups. The typical slowdown that's associated with brand new drivers and brand new throwers trying to figure out where they're at, especially after dark. And underestimating certain areas. I'd written to the council about a couple of our areas that they horribly underestimated the quantity of carts that they were going to be tipping and the amount of trash that was going to be in those areas. And they were hours in there in some cases for just a couple of our locations. I want to emphasize to the council and to the public, these challenges aren't excuses. Had a meeting with Mr. Bird this morning. I feel I was very clear in what my expectations are for that company and what our citizens' expectations are for that company and what we expect to occur very quickly. I think Mr. Bird got the message and is processing through that. We worked through some scheduling issues, tried to give him suggestions after 8 years of experience here in Raymore that's specific to Raymore on some route changes he may want to make and some process changes that he may want to put in place very quickly to make sure that we get around this curve as fast as possible. He guaranteed what has not been guaranteed by anybody else, and I would just find it amazingly difficult to hit this in the second week, but he is guaranteeing 100% coverage on both of those days, would be my expectation, but that's a lofty goal for people who are only seeing our neighborhoods for the second time. So many thanks to go out to our own people who were our eyes out there. Mr. Eakey wrote a very nice thank you because he's the one who ultimately is fielding the calls, but we had 4 people internally here, 5 really if you count Ms. Bratton, who were fantastic ambassadors to a very many calls on Wednesday, Thursday, and Friday. And they did it all with a smile on their face and had people saying thank you and laughing by the end of almost every single one of those phone calls. Our people are fantastic. That's Trash Update, and I would entertain any questions or comments the council might have.
Anyone? Pretty thorough update. Thank you, Jim. Appreciate that.
Thank you, sir.
Anything else?
Yes, one last item, just to update you on next week's work session. Again, the council has okayed Tuesday night, January 16th, for that at 7 p.m. There will be the economic development quarterly report that we've promised the council will be coming now each quarter, at the beginning of each quarter. Communications and marketing quarterly report that we've promised the council you'll be getting. And then there will be a joint meeting with the park board, and there will be 2 topics for that joint meeting in addition to anything else the council would like to discuss with the park board. The first one being the final plans that are in place that the park board has seen and approved, will see and approve tomorrow night for TB Hanna, so that we can get that particular project bid out and on the street. And then we'll be presenting to the council. I know that you all have already approved the final plans and bidding for Hawk Ridge Park, but we'd like to present something a little unusual to you, and the park board would like to present something a little bit unusual to you for the playground in Hawk Ridge Park. We think we've got a great idea, and would seek council's approval for that. I don't want to steal the park board's thunder or Mr. Musteen's thunder, but I think we could really do some neat stuff for a lot of neat people relative to that playground. And so you all will be hearing about that as well next week. That concludes staff reports for this evening, sir.
Thank you, sir. Any other questions? Okay, thanks. No other reports?
That is all.
We'll move on to, there are no committee reports. Next item is the consent agenda. We have 5 items on the consent agenda. I would entertain a motion to dispose of that.
Mr. Mayor, I move that we approve the consent agenda, including item A, City Council minutes from December 11th, 2017, appointments and affirmations of membership to incentive district boards, 155th Street Reconstruction Phase 1 project acceptance and final payment, item D, Municipal Circle Microsurfacing Project acceptance and final payment, and item E, 2017 Street Preservation Project acceptance and final payment.
I'll second the motion.
Thank you. The motion's been made and seconded to approve the consent agenda, all 5 items. Any further discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor of the motion? Motion carries 7-0, 1 absent. That'll move us on to unfinished business. First item is, could I please have the second reading of Bill 3324 by title only?
The second reading of Bill 3324 by title only, an ordinance of the City of Raymore, Missouri, amending the zoning map from C1 Neighborhood Commercial District to C2 General Commercial District, lots 1 through 4 in Cumberland Plaza Subdivision, Raymore, Cass County, Missouri.
Thank you. Is there a motion to dispose of Bill 3324?
Mr. Mayor, I move that we approve Bill number 3324 for the rezoning of Cumberland Plaza, lots 1 through 4.
I'll second the motion, sir.
Motion has been made and seconded to approve the second reading of Bill 3324. Any further discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor of the motion? Motion carries 7-0, 1 absent. Thank you. Can I please have the second reading of Bill 3325 by title only?
The second reading of Bill 3325 by title only, an ordinance of the City of Raymore, Missouri, amending the zoning map from A Agricultural District to C3 Regional Commercial District, a part of Tract 1 of the Good Ranch, Raymore, Cass County, Missouri.
Thank you. Is there a motion to dispose of Bill 3325?
Mr. Mayor, I move that we approve Bill 3325 for the rezoning of part of the Good Ranch Tract 1.
I'll second the motion, sir.
Motion been made and seconded to approve the second reading of Bill 3325. Any further discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor of the motion? Motion carries 7-0, 1 absent. Can I please have the second reading of Bill 3320 by title only?
The second reading of Bill 3320 by title only, an ordinance of the City Council of the City of Raymore, Missouri, awarding a contract to Neil Settle Printing for printing services.
Thank you. Is there a motion to dispose of the second reading of Bill 3320?
Mr. Mayor, I move that we approve Bill 3320, award of contract to Neil Settle Printing for printing services.
I'll second the motion, sir.
Thank you. The motion been made and seconded to approve the second reading of Bill 3320. Any further discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor of the motion? Motion carries 7-0, 1 absent. Thank you. Can I please have the second reading of Bill 3321 by title only?
The second reading of Bill 3321 by title only, an ordinance of the City Council of the City of Raymore awarding a contract to Fast Signs for sign fabrication and printing services.
Thank you. Is there a motion to dispose of Bill 3321?
Mr. Mayor, I move that we approve Bill 3321 to award a contract to Fast Signs for sign production and printing.
I'll second that motion, sir.
Thank you. Motion has been made and seconded to approve the second reading of Bill 3321. Any further discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor of the motion? Motion carries 7-0, one absent. Can I please have the second reading of Bill 3322 by title only?
The second reading of Bill 3322 by title only, an ordinance of the City Council of the City of Raymore appointing Kapke and Willerth LLC as the city attorney for the City of Raymore, Missouri, and authorizing the execution of a contract for services.
Thank you. Is there a motion to dispose of Bill 3322?
Mr. Mayor, I move that we approve Bill 3322 to award a contract to our city attorney.
I'll second the motion, sir.
Motion been made and seconded to approve the second reading of Bill 3322. Any further discussion? Mr. Holman.
Thank you, sir. Mr. Zur, we've taxed you at times. Do you still want to be here?
It is my honor and pleasure to continue to serve this city.
Outstanding, sir. Thank you.
Any further discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor of the motion? Motion carries 7-0, one absent. Thank you. Congratulations. Okay, please have the second reading of Bill 3323 by title only.
The second reading of Bill 3323 by title only, an ordinance of the City Council of the City of Raymore appointing William N. Marshall III as city prosecutor for the City of Raymore, Missouri, and authorizing the execution of a contract for services.
Thank you. Is there a motion to dispose of Bill 3323?
Mr. Mayor, I move that we approve Bill 3323 to award a contract to our city prosecutor.
I'll second the motion, sir.
Motion been made and seconded to approve the second reading of Bill 3323. Any further discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor of the motion? Motion carries 7-0, one absent. Could I please have the second reading of Bill 3326 by title only?
The second reading of Bill 3326 by title only, an ordinance of the City of Raymore, Missouri amending Chapter 545, Property Maintenance Regulations of the Raymore City Code.
Thank you. Is there a motion to dispose of the second reading of Bill 3326?
Mr. Mayor, I move that we approve Bill 3326 to amend our property maintenance code.
I'll second the motion, sir.
Is there any discussion? All those in favor of the motion? Motion carries 7-0, one absent. That'll move us on to new business now. Can I please have the first reading of Bill 3329 by title only?
The first reading of Bill 3329 by title only, an ordinance of the City of Raymore, Missouri amending Section 405.040D and Section 420.070I of the Unified Development Code of the Raymore City Code.
Thank you. This requires a public hearing. I'll open the public hearing at this time and ask for a staff report.
Thank you, sir. I'd ask Ms. Cataract to make a staff report.
Okay.
Thank you, sir. Bill 3329 proposes the 26th Amendment to our Unified Development Code. When there is an amendment to the UDC, it does require a public hearing, so we did advertise that for this evening. Want to enter into the record our growth management plan, the Unified Development Code, the notice of publication in the Journal, and the staff report submitted to the council this evening. The 26th Amendment is a result of discussion the Planning Commission had at our annual review held earlier in 2017. The 26th Amendment proposes two separate revisions, so I'll discuss them separately. Revision number one is a proposal to clarify code language related to the keeping of animals on certain property within the city. Currently within the City of Raymore, our UDC specifies that the keeping of animals such as cattle, horses, sheep, goats are only allowed on lots that are zoned either agricultural or rural estate. The agricultural lots have a minimum acreage of 10 acres to be zoned agricultural. Rural estate are lots that are at least 3 acres in size. After this particular code language was adopted, it goes back to 2009, staff did complete a written declaratory ruling, which is really just a written interpretation of the code. Because a specific animal was not identified being allowed or disallowed, and that would be chickens. Looking at other sections of the code, the Animal Control Code and the UDC itself, staff made the declaratory ruling that chickens were included in that list of animals, so that chickens were only allowed on property zoned agricultural rural estate. With the 26th Amendment, what staff is proposing to do is just solidify that interpretation into code and simply spell out chickens and fowl along with the cattle, horses, sheep, goats, et cetera, are only allowed in A and RE lots. So that's the first revision that we would propose, is simply clarifying the way the code's been interpreted all along. We're not changing the code. We're simply putting in writing to make it very clear to a reader that, oh yeah, chickens are included in that list of animals. But we are proposing one modification in that we have a few properties in the city that are zoned R1 that are at least 3 acres in size. In fact, we have some R1 property that has acreage up to 80 acres. While they could go through a rezoning process to A or RE, we felt that if it's zoned R1 and it's at least 3 acres, that we should, out of fairness, treat them the same regarding the keeping of chickens, and not all livestock, but just chickens, and allow chickens on 3-acre properties at R1. So that would be a modification to what we currently have in our code under the first revision of the 26th Amendment. The second revision, we're wanting to clarify language regarding the installation of solar energy systems. We do allow solar energy systems on almost all of our properties in the city. What we're doing here is we just needed to clarify the language, break out the section of code dealing with anything that's mounted on the building, whether it's a roof-mounted solar or wall-mounted solar. We have specific provisions for that, and then we're also making provisions or clarifying provisions for ground-mounted systems. We're not necessarily expanding the allowances. We're just trying to clarify what the different regulations are for all types of solar energy systems. We're seeing an increase in installation of these systems recently, and we just wanted to make sure that it's very clear in our code what the provisions are. So those are the 2 revisions that we would propose as part of the 26th Amendment. The Planning and Zoning Commission did submit proposed findings of fact regarding their discussion on the amendment, and it was at their November 21st meeting that they voted 5-1 to accept the proposed findings and forward this case to the council with the recommendation of approval. I included the excerpt of minutes because they did have some discussion regarding this proposed amendment back on November 21st. At that public hearing that the commission held, there was some interest discussed regarding the keeping of animals. But I want to make it very clear that it is not part of the 26th Amendment to allow the keeping of any of the animals I identified on any lots under 3 acres. So that is not part of the proposal this evening. That would conclude staff report at this time, sir.
Thank you, sir. Any questions of staff at this time? Mr. Holman.
So I'd like to ask a couple of clarification questions. From my time on planning and zoning, certainly we've grown rapidly as a city, and I would assume, to the best of your knowledge, that houses that have acreage such as 3 acres or the one you mentioned with 80 acres their zoning would probably predate most of our modern practices. Is that a correct assessment? That's why they're in an R1, yet they actually have such a large tract of land?
That's correct. We didn't have the RE district, for example, back then, yes.
I remember that. Okay, and then the chief qualification on the keeping of animals is obviously the size of the lot. You're going to need size for especially certain animals, and that's the reason that we've decided that the generic rule, if you will, is you're going to have 3 acres. Like I said, you've also got to be in one of the named zoning districts such as agricultural RE or now R1. But the chief reason for the change would be that the 3 acres is really our primary consideration for the keeping of the animals. Is that correct as well?
That's correct, sir. Over a number of years, the Planning Commission has consistently made that statement. The keeping of animals needs to be on lots of at least 3 acres.
I thought I was right. It never hurts to check. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else? Mr. Berenson.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Mr. Catter, I'd like to thank the Planning and Zoning Commission for the work they've done on this so far. I do have a quick question. I went through a rezoning process about 6 or 7 years ago on the 5 acres that I live on. And in doing so, I read this code at the time. And under keeping of animals, it lists cattle, cows, horses, sheep, goats, and similar animals. And I noticed then it didn't specify chickens. And in reading this again, I asked myself, were they left out on purpose? I mean, when this was written initially, were they purposely left out? Or it seems like a pretty big oversight to actually leave chickens out of there. And then for us to, just make the assumption that that was supposed to be in there. I mean, domestic animals, that can be inferred as dogs and cats as well. So it was very vague. I guess my question is that we really don't know what they meant when they wrote this. I really don't know what my question is, I guess. I just wanted to highlight that I think that it's possible that when this was written initially that maybe they meant to leave that out on purpose. I guess that's what I'm saying.
My recollection of when the code was written, the whole movement of backyard chickens on residential lots really wasn't very prominent at that point in time when that code section was written. I think most individuals, when we were looking at code language, the keeping of chickens was more on chicken farms, so it was truly an agricultural venture. I think the movement has changed everybody's perception on whether chickens should be allowed on smaller lots. I don't know that it was specifically an oversight, that it was intentional to exclude them. I know other code section in the city code does deal with the keeping of fowl, like the animal control code in specific. So I don't think it was intentional to omit it, and that's why our interpretation has always been to include it with all other livestock that is regulated.
Thank you very much.
Yeah, because our code has existed for some time now, the animal control code that has included it.
It has
restrictions for fowl.
Yes, the code, the UDC only dates to 2009, but the zoning regulations that included the keeping of animals even predates that.
Right. Okay, thank you. Anyone else? If not, we'll go ahead and open it to the public at this time. If you want to address this issue before the council, please step forward, give your name and address for the record, and try to keep your comments to 5 minutes or less.
I'm J.C. McClucker, alias Jim Peterman, 413 Bayview Drive. I'm here representing the Cass County Need My Space Urban Chickens Union. We don't want to be fenced in someone's backyard. You can't prove that we pass on diseases and infections. It's a government scam. Salmonella and comes from lots of things, so we kind of get it wrongfully accused. We suggest if you want a pet, get a dog or a cat. We don't like being pets. That's all I got.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
Anyone else care to address the council at this time? There are none. I'll go ahead and close the public hearing at this time. And I'd ask for a motion to dispose of Bill 3329.
Mr. Mayor, I move that we approve Bill 3329, the 26th Amendment to the UDC.
I'll second that motion, sir.
Thank you. Motion's been made and seconded to approve the first reading of Bill 3329. Any further discussion? Mr. Kellogg.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Thank you, Mr. McCluck. It's been a while since we've addressed this subject, but I remember last time we did, we had an intern, city manager intern, and gave a really good, thorough report back to the council at that time, and gave his rendition of how a rooster sounds. I remember that. So there's a lot of fun things that go around the chicken issues. But on a serious note, some of the lessons that I learned from back then, and I remember from back then, that I don't see reflective here, is when we're starting to talk about chickens, and I'm I can't say that I'm opposed to this, but I see, or I'm failing to see some of the specificities, the specifics, and the differentiations that we spoke about a few years back it's probably '09. We discussed, and I remember a report of surrounding communities that allowed them and what types and that. I don't see where we're differentiating as far as those discussions between roosters and hens. I remember a lot of my colleagues back then were somewhat open-minded to the hens because they don't make the crowing. But there was, I remember there being more opposition to the roosters. I don't see those suggestions or that input into this. Can I ask for why, or would this be something that we could ask to be further researched before this comes up? Because I remember that being a very informative topic, and a topic that actually, in my opinion, I'll speak for myself. It helped me cross over that fence to be a little more accepting, because I was so stubborn that, you know, I thought, no, I come from Iowa, so I know, but I never thought, you know, to think as a council member that all chickens don't crow. So, you know, with that stipulation in there and that idea, I was willing to open my mind and open the gates for that at that point. So I think it's worthy of discussion right now.
Mr. Burke. Mr. Holman.
Okay. Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I was going to mention this earlier just as a devil's advocate to talking about chickens. But before that, I'll mention, I know when I started on planning and zoning in 2013, one of the first things I was informed about was urban chickens, and so I know it was addressed in 2012 as well by Councilman Moorhead when he was on planning and zoning. But back to my point about being a devil's advocate, it doesn't mention pigs on here either. And I'm certainly not in favor of backyard pigs. Thank you.
There are still code enforcement regulations regarding those types of animals. It's not under the Uniform Development Code, it's under the actual code of the city. So there are ramifications and restrictions within that for limitations and so forth. Mr. Holman.
Just for a point of clarification, Mr. Catarat, what's being put to us tonight in the 26th Amendment to the UDO is really not a change in anything that we've been doing. Staff made a declaratory judgment. This is just simply cleaning up the language to say, yes, this is exactly what we've said, what we've been doing, and this was our intent. Is that a correct statement?
That's correct. So what Councilmember Kellogg was referencing, there has been a lot of research done over the years. The reason you're not seeing specifics regarding the keeping of roosters or the care of kennels or number of animals, things of that nature, is because most of that discussion centers around keeping of chickens on smaller lots and residential lots. When you have acreage, whether you keep hens or roosters is really, we're not regulating that. We allow them on both. Most communities that regulate no roosters would be on small lots. And that's why we're not seeing that specific language, because we're not changing what we currently have in place.
Ms. Abdel, go ahead.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. And I just want to talk for a minute about some emails I've gotten from several people in the community about that, about wanting the backyard chickens and hoping to see that issue come forward tonight. And my conversation with the ones I've been able to touch base with has been that this isn't really the place for that. If we're going to look at backyard chickens again, that needs to be an entire new section of code, yep. An entire new part with lots of regulations for setbacks and sizes of coops and how many and whether they're roosters or hens. And so what we're voting on tonight, in my opinion, doesn't even touch the backyard chickens. And if that's something that we have a group in the community that are interested in, it's definitely something that we can look at again, but it doesn't fit into what we're doing tonight.
No, excellent point. Thank you. Mr. Berenson.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Did you get your question together this time?
A little better.
Okay, good.
A little better, yeah. I'd like to think out loud, sir. Councilman Abdelgawad just really said everything that I was going to say there, so I just wanted to say that I support what she said. I too have seen all the emails and have talked to a few people that support this, and like Councilman Holman said, this is just clarifying the language, and this is not the time and place for that. But certainly we'll take a look at that if we get enough public support for that as well. And thank you again for letting me ramble earlier. I appreciate that.
Thank you, sir. Anyone else? Mr. Barber.
Yeah, this may sound like Councilman Barrington's question, but just for the record, we do allow chickens in the city limits of Raymore. Because I've gotten some feedback from folks that say, why don't we allow them? We do allow them.
Yes.
Okay, thank you.
Mr. Townsend, we haven't heard from you yet. Care to join in?
No comment.
No comment, okay. All right, we have a motion and a second to approve the first reading of Bill 3329. If there's no further discussion, all those in favor? Motion carries 7-0, one absent. Thank you. Could I please have the first reading of Bill 3330 by title only?
The first reading of Bill 3330 by title only, an ordinance of the City of Raymore, Missouri, amending Section 405.020H, Section 420.050E, and Section 485.010 of the Unified Development Code of the Raymore City Code.
Thank you. This also requires a public hearing. I'll open the public hearing at this time and ask for a staff report.
Thank you,
Mr.
Your Honor. I
Fearborn.
would ask Mr. Cataret to make a staff report on this agenda item.
Thank you, sir. Bill 3330 proposes the 27th Amendment to the Unified Development Code. Again, being a proposed change to city code, it requires public hearing that was advertised for this evening. Want to enter into the record the Growth Management Plan, Unified Development Code, notice of publication of the public hearing in the Journal, and the staff report submitted to council this evening. The 27th Amendment was also discussed as part of the annual review of the Unified Development Code by the Commission. And it consists of 3 revisions, all interrelated to the same topic area. The first revision would add definitions to clarify the overall intent of the 27th Amendment. Currently, the city does allow and define accessory dwelling units being allowed on property zone A, RE, and RR. RR properties are at least 1 acre in size. What we're proposing is to clarify the definition by defining what is an attached accessory dwelling unit and what would be a detached accessory dwelling unit. The second part of the revision would then identify in what zoning districts those dwelling units would be allowed. And what we're proposing to do is expand where they would be allowed into our properties that are zoned R1. The third part of this revision would then establish the size and design requirements for any accessory dwelling unit, whether they're attached or detached structures. And that, again, what we're proposing there is to modify some of the current standards that we already have in place regarding accessory dwelling units. So the Planning Commission at a public hearing did submit proposed findings of fact on this request for your consideration. It was their November 21st meeting when they did vote 5-1 to accept those findings and forward the case to the council with the recommendation of approval. A public hearing was advertised for this evening's city council meeting, so we want to move forward and open that public hearing and hear if there is any public comments. What we would then request as staff is for the council to defer action on this item to a work session. We would submit the February 5th work session. What we'd like to do, it's an important topic for the council and the community to consider. So what we'd like to do is have a presentation at that work session from our city planner, David Gress, who worked on this amendment, because I think it's helpful to see how this amendment actually would apply to property. So he's got a number of illustrations, and he can demonstrate, show you a typical lot in Fox Haven, a typical lot in any subdivision, and show you how an accessory dwelling unit could work, and go over the details of what we would describe for our design standards to allow this type of use to work. So we think that's best done in a work session rather than in this format this evening. So maybe at the conclusion of the public hearing, if council would accept staff's proposal and defer action on this item to the work session, and then depending upon conversation at the work session, if it does make its way back to council, we would re-advertise for a public hearing, again, give the public adequate time to review the proposal and make comments at a future public hearing. So that would be the request of staff of this item this evening.
Thank you, sir. Mr. Holman.
Thank you, Mr. Cataret. So, Mr. Zur, would that most properly be form in tabling this motion after conclusion of the forum for the public to speak tonight, as Mr. Cataret requested?
Yes, I'd suggest you're going to table it to a date certain that'll be taken back up for consideration at a work session, or have it moved table it specifically to the February, I believe he said, second work session? Fifth work session.
So a motion to table to the work session on February 5th
for further discussion.
Thank you.
Okay, Mr. Kellogg.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. This might be a question for Mr. Zur also, but you're going to open, your intention is to open the public comment, the public hearing.
Public hearing's open now.
Public hearing is open now, so you will call for public comment. Will we still have public comment open for the February 5th if we do table this, or will we suspend it until February 5th?
The February 5th is a work session only.
Okay.
It is, I probably generated this action on staff's part. As you know, the items that are going to go to planning and zoning go to before the development review committee of staff prior to that. And staff had a number of very interesting comments, some questioning back and forth about the item that we thought the council would benefit from us revisiting that with you, not on a night when you actually had to vote on it. It's a pretty, when you think about it, it's a pretty complex item. And so we would request that the council defer to a table to a work session, and then when it came back before you all after that work session at a regular meeting, after we've had the chance to digest through all of that with you all, then at the next regular meeting, the public hearing would remain open. We would re-advertise that the public hearing has been continued to the following regular meeting.
Sure. Mr. Kellogg.
And I think that's good there. I just wanted to clarify that it's historically, not historically, but it's our practice and our policy that the work sessions is work session, and we don't allow public comment. It's not that we don't want it, but we get so much done during that. But then I suspect what we'll do, we'll go into the February 5th, we'll discuss this. All it takes is one of us say, put it on the agenda, and it's on the agenda. So it will probably come back the next week. More than likely, I suspect February 12th, am I correct? Probably February 12th is when it'll probably come back, and then just open it back up. So I'm just kind of speaking out loud how the process will go. I don't want people to think that we're going to table this and still have a public hearing open during a work session, and then be very disappointed if they show up to speak.
Well, and that brings up a good question, though. Would we then have another public hearing at the first reading?
In essence, it would appear you're not necessarily closing your public hearing until that next go-around.
Okay. All right, so I won't close the public hearing. I'll just ask for a comment and then the motion.
That's correct.
All right, thank you, sir. Anyone else? If not, I'll open the floor for the public to comment on this particular item. And please step forward and state your name and address for the record, and keep your comments to 5 minutes or less. If no one will come forward, I would entertain a motion to table at this time.
Mr. Mayor, I move that we defer action on Bill 3330 until our February 5th work session.
I'll second the motion, sir.
Motion's been made and seconded to defer action on this item until a work session on February the 5th. Any further discussion? All those in favor of the motion? Motion carries 7-0, one absent. So we'll put that on the work session for February the 5th. Could I please have the first reading of Bill 3332 by title only?
The first reading of Bill 3332 by title only, an ordinance of the City of Raymore, Missouri, authorizing the city manager to enter into a guaranteed pricing contract with Welch Silt Fence and Erosion Control, LLC, to provide on-call erosion control services.
Thank you. Is there a staff report, sir?
Thank you, sir. I would ask Mr. Grass to make a staff report on this agenda item.
Thank you, Mr. Fearborn, Mr. Mayor, members of the council. City code requires contractors to install, maintain, and repair erosion control measures on their work sites. From time to time, we find it necessary to step in on their behalf, whether it's replacing wattles in the sewers or repairing silt fence or cleaning mud off the street. This contract gives us the mechanism to do that. Funds for this corrective work are then deducted from deposits that the contractors have on file with the city. So there is no cost to the city for these services. We do recommend award of the contract to Welch Silt Fence and Erosion Control for this contract. That concludes staff report.
Thank you, sir. Any questions of staff? Mr. Kellogg.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I'm just kind of curious, in the last 2 years, a couple years, say, how many instances have we needed to use this, a service like this? I'm just curious, because I know we instituted a couple years ago the certification for people, contractors particularly, to how to install silt fencing. So I'm just kind of curious how much we use a service like this.
I would say it's down to a handful of times compared to the first year. I think as Lori Crandall has worked with the builders and continued the education, we find a number of them have actually engaged Welch Silt Fence to not only do the work, but also to do the regular inspections that are required and then just proactively make the repairs. So there's the occasional mud off the street that we have to clean, or if things are imminent or mud's running onto an adjoining property, but it's probably down to about a handful.
Thank you, sir. Anyone else? Hearing none, I'll ask for a motion to dispose of Bill 3332.
Mr. Mayor, I move that we approve Bill 3332 to award a contract for on-call erosion control.
I'll second the motion, sir.
Thank you. Motion been made and seconded to approve the first reading of Bill 3332. Any further discussion? Ms. Abdelgawad?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I just wanted to share what I thought was an interesting observation from the staff report, that this company that we're awarding this contract to has significantly lower prices than the other one who bid, and also a much faster response time, 4 hours or less response time compared to guaranteed 1 day. So it seems like we're getting the best deal in this contract.
Thank you. Anyone else? Hearing none, all those in favor of the motion? Motion carries 7-0, one absent. Okay, please have the first reading of Bill 3334 by title only.
The first reading of Bill 3334 by title only, an ordinance of the City of Raymore, Missouri, authorizing the city manager to execute an agreement with Pipeline Inspection and Condition Analysis Corporation, PICA, for the data analysis of the Owen Good Force Main in the amount of $94,248, and authorizing the city manager to approve change orders within established budget constraints.
Thank you. Is there a staff report?
Thank you, sir. I would ask Mr. Grass to make a staff report on this item.
Thank you, Mr. Fearborn, Mr. Mayor, members of the council. In 2011, after several significant failures of the Owen Good Force Main in the vicinity of the lift station, the city bid out and services for kind of a comprehensive investigation of the condition of the force main. The force main is 17,000 feet in length. It runs from 195th Street up here to 58 Highway. At that time, the contract was awarded to Pipeline Inspection and Condition Analysis Corporation. What the contract called for is that they did a complete data gathering of the condition of the force main, and then at the time of the original contract, we purchased specific analysis of some critical areas, in particular the area south of Hubach Hill Road, between the Hubach Hill Road and 195th Street, which led us to replace a significant portion of the force main there because of deteriorated condition. And then a little bit further north, after we had a failure in the Silver Lake area, we also did a little bit of work north of Lucy Webb Road, where we found the need to do some point repairs down near Lucy Webb Road and Lakeshore Drive. What this contract does is purchase the detailed analysis for the remaining 9,000 feet of pipeline, which If any defects are identified, or if looks like there's a decay curve there, allows us to plan for repairs rather than having to do them on the fly like we did last year when we had the significant failure under 58 Highway. These always seem to occur when rain is imminent. We have a limited number of storage at the lift station. During that one, we had to scramble to get a piece of equipment from Lawrence. We had to the contractor had to run a person down to Arkansas to get another piece of equipment so that we could do this. So this information will allow us to do some planning for if there are any future repairs. That concludes staff report.
Thank you, sir. Anyone have any questions? Mr. Holman?
Generally speaking, and summed up to a layperson's terms, this is good preventative maintenance. Is that a correct assessment, sir? I think it's the equivalent of any other diagnostic testing that a person would do for their own personal health. Yes.
Thank you, sir. Ms. Abdelgawad?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I was just curious, Mr. Kress, do you know how much that initial contract with them was for?
It was approximately $190,000.
And that was from the beginning through the data, or that was just the data?
That was the inspection of the 17,000 feet, and then detailed analysis of approximately 9,000 feet of the line, about half of the line.
Okay, thank you.
Anyone else? Hearing none, is there a motion to dispose of Bill 3334?
Mr. Mayor, I move that we approve Bill 3334, approval of the proposal for data analysis for the Owen Good Force Main.
I'll second the motion, sir.
Motion's been made and seconded to approve the first reading of Bill 3334. Any further discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor of the motion? Motion carries 7-0, one absent. Could I please have the first reading? Oh, this is a resolution. Could I please have the reading of Resolution 1802 by title only?
The reading of Resolution 18-02 by title only, a resolution of the City of Raymore, Missouri, adopting a policy on city acceptance of private infrastructure.
Thank you. Is there a staff report?
Thank you, Your Honor. I would ask Mr. Carteret to make staff report on this item.
Thank you, sir. Periodically, the city has received requests to assume maintenance responsibility and take over ownership of private infrastructure. Requests have ranged from pre-treating streets in the Morning View subdivision, coordinating repairs of lift stations, and even taking over responsibility of a private street in the Remington commercial neighborhood. To date, these requests have been handled on more of a case-by-case basis without any kind of formal policy or procedure for the council to review these requests. So at a recent work session back in December, council discussed establishing a policy framework, directed staff to develop a formal policy to address the acceptance of public infrastructure. So that policy is included as part of Resolution 18-02. The policy again would apply to any request to have the council accept and assume responsibility for future maintenance of any private infrastructure. The policy identifies the steps that would be taken for an entity, and when we talk about entity, it's probably a property owners association or a homeowners association moving forward with the request, but identifies the steps they would need to follow to get a request formally in front of the council. The policy identifies what the qualifying factors would be for each type of private infrastructure that we would consider assuming responsibility for. It would identify what happens if there's actually a deficiency found in any of the existing private infrastructure. So when we do the analysis and look at the qualifying factors, we want to know, the condition of what we're talking about accepting and if there's any deficiencies in that infrastructure. And then it establishes the factors that the council would consider when accepting the private infrastructure itself. So that would conclude staff reports, sir.
Thank you, Jim. I know Mr. Holman had asked that this be researched and that we consider it. It was looked at in a work session, an excellent policy, I believe, that will help cover us for the future for the acceptance of any private infrastructure that the city would consider. But I'll open it up now for any questions of Mr. Carteret. Do you have anything, Mr. Holman? Mr. Fearborn?
Just one final item. The council will remember we brought this to you in work session, and you seemed very favorable to bring it here with one very minor wording change amendment that was associated with a shall being changed to may in the top structure for acceptance of infrastructure, that we may, and I added to that to further clarify that that was notwithstanding the discussion of financial responsibility, to keep that open as well. So,
Thank you, sir. Mr. Burke.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Question for Mr. Carteret. So in essence, this policy will take the opinion of the lay persons on this dais out of the discussion until we've been given quite a bit of data and information to make an informed judgment with this procedure, correct?
I think that's correct. When you look at the qualifying factors section of the policy, it's pretty clear what information needs to be presented for council to make an informed decision on the request.
Thank you, sir. Mr. Holman?
Thank you, sir. Yeah, you were spot on with your comments. I did introduce this to the council. We seemed like we had been received the bums rush on a number of these requests from private entities, mostly HOAs or POAs, to take over. But another one we didn't mention was the cemetery as well. So we've had even some ones outside the norm lately, and we really didn't have a good framework of how to look at these. Again, it was a case-by-case basis, and did the individual member of the council have some personal knowledge of that? Have they been on the council at the time, or what the history was? This just gives us some general framework to consider, much like in my opinion, like a case before the Planning and Zoning Commission. This is the framework. These are the factors that we should consider. I think it just gives staff a really good idea of what to lay out for us and for the things that we should look for.
Absolutely. Mr. Abdelgawad.
Oops, I agree with what Mr. Holman said. And I think that it also gives any organization who wants to bring something forward to the city a starting place, some guidelines to start with too. So kind of both sides of the coin there. I think this will be helpful.
Yep. Anyone else? Mr. Barber.
Yeah, I'm just going to jump on the bandwagon. I think this was a great idea. It was long needed, and I think it does level the playing field. So, and from what I looked at the policy and talking with staff, it's going to help staff as well, make it easier for you to bring something to us. And we're always looking to have you buy fewer aspirins, not more. So, thank you.
Anyone else? Hearing none, is there a motion to dispose of Resolution 1802?
Mr. Mayor, I move that we approve Resolution 1802, acceptance of private infrastructure policy.
And since I started this, I'll second the motion, sir.
Fine, thank you. The motion's been made and seconded to approve Resolution 18-02. Any further discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor of the motion? Motion carries 7-0, one absent. Okay, please have the first reading of Bill 3331 by title only.
The first reading of Bill 3331 by title only, an ordinance of the City of Raymore, Missouri approving an agreement between the Mid-America Regional Council Solid Waste Management District and the City of Raymore, Missouri relating to Regional Household Hazardous Waste Program.
Thank you. Is there a staff report?
Thanks, sir. I'd ask Mr. Krass to make a staff report on this particular item.
Thank you, Mr. Fearborn. Mr. Mayor, members of council. The city participates on an annual basis with the Mid-American Regional Council Solid Waste Management District for household hazardous waste disposal. What this program does is allow three things for our residents. One, they have access to two drop-off facilities, one in Kansas City, Missouri, the other in Lee Summit. It also allows them to participate in any of the mobile events that Mark hosts throughout the year. Over the years, this has been a very successful program. Last year, Raymore residents utilized this program to dispose of over 47,000 pounds of household hazard materials. So we do recommend council award or enter into this agreement for this continuing program. That concludes staff report.
Thank you, sir. Good program. Any questions of staff? Anyone? Hearing none, I would entertain a motion to dispose of the first reading of Bill 3331.
Mr. Mayor, I move that we approve Bill 3331, the Mark Household Hazardous Waste Agreement.
I'll second the motion, sir.
Motion been made and seconded to approve the first reading of Bill 3331. Any further discussion? Ms. Abdel, go ahead.
Just real quick, I want to thank staff for the information that was provided in the packet associated with this. Before, I think we've seen the like contract and general information, but we've never seen the statistics of the things that are dropped off of there before. So that was, even though it was microscopic, it was helpful. Thank you.
Anyone else? Mr. Ullman, did you have something? Nope. Okay. Hearing none, all those in favor of the motion? Motion carries 7-0, one absent. Can I please have the first reading of Bill 3328 by title only?
The first reading of Bill 3328 by title only, an ordinance of the City of Raymore, Missouri, amending sections 105.060, 110.010, 110.100, 110.120, 110.220, 110.250, 111.070, 111.160, 120.020, 120.100 of the Raymore City Code.
Thank you, ma'am. Is there a staff report?
After that mind-numbing title, sir.
Yeah, I know. I said all those numbers.
Yeah. Yes, there is. And I would ask Mr. Zur to make the staff report on this.
Thank you, Mr. Fairborn. Mayor, members of the council, it's a pleasure to be able to present this evening. Unfortunately, I am responsible for that title, so I'll try to ignore the mind-numbingness of it. This proposed ordinance will provide for a creation, or basically allow for an exact alignment and consistency between the charter as recently amended with your election and the current code provisions. You'll find, and I have provided as part of the agenda item information sheet this evening, that it will address 10 identified sections of code that will require amendment. I'm happy to indicate each one of those if you're inclined to do so. However, it would be basically focused on candidacy qualifications, veto powers of the mayor and the mayor pro tem, a number of voting provisions, and procedural aspects of the council, as well as qualifications for the council and the mayor. Again, I'm happy to go in and identify each one of the potential changes by section if you're inclined to ask questions on that. Otherwise, that would conclude staff report on this issue.
Okay, thank you, sir. Are there any questions of staff at this time? Mr. Burke.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I'm not sure if this question is for Mr. Fairborn or Mr. Zur. I hate to bring this up, being that I was on the commission, and I'm looking at section 101.25 voting on page 296 of the packet. I'll let you find that spot. 110.250 on voting. On an item on section D, where it talks about this shall mean a vote of at least 5 of the 8 council members present. Does the word present, is that is that in the wording that was on our ballot, and is that word present necessary or incorrect in its verbiage, I guess? I would think that without the word, if we were to amend it to get rid of the word present, it would reflect the intention of the commission, but I don't know that it's necessary. In your opinion, is getting rid of the word present necessary, and is it appropriate due to the fact that this went to the voters?
It would not have an impact. The reason that the word was that, and again, the wording of the code in many instances that we are trying to bring the charter into will not exactly reflect the wording of the charter. It's actually meant to be the code is meant to be slightly more detailed than the charter is, as the Charter Commission members are only too well aware. I think it would not matter one way or the other if it was removed. The word present was inserted to reflect that you actually have to physically be here to be a voting member, not the assumption that 8 council members are actually present. In other words, you couldn't vote without actually being seated at the dais. But it would change nothing if the word were eliminated either. in case it was causing confusion.
Mr. Zur.
I can go ahead and add to that. I do have the summary of recommended amendments that was originally put forward, and it does in fact have present at both of those locations.
Well, then that's on me. Thank you.
Anyone else have questions of staff? Hearing none, is there a motion to dispose of the first reading of Bill 3328?
Mr. Mayor, I move that we approve Bill 3328, amending certain sections of the Raymore City Code to reflect charter amendments.
I'll second the motion, sir.
Motion been made and seconded to approve the first reading of Bill 3328. Any further discussion? Mr. Holman.
Thank you, sir. I just want to point out that this and the subsequent second reading will be the culmination of a long body of work by the Charter Commission, which included certainly yourself, Mr. Burke, Mr. Moorhead, former Councilmember Hubach, and several other very dedicated citizens. Citizens voted on it. It passed. This is just the last ribbon to tie up. And again, I appreciate the work and dedication put forth by that body to get us to this point, sir.
Absolutely. Thank you, sir. Any other comments? Hearing none, all those in favor of the motion? Motion carries 7-0, one absent. Could I please have the first reading of Bill 3335 by title only?
The first reading of Bill 3335 by title only, an ordinance of the City of Raymore, Missouri, amending the fiscal year 2018 operating budget.
Thank you. Is there a staff report?
Thank you, sir. I would ask Mr. Mustine to make a staff report on this item.
Thanks, sir. Mayor, members of the council. Proposal tonight before you is to transition our part-time office assistant to a full-time position. We found that with the addition of Centerview, the growth of our programs in our department, that part-time position just isn't adequate to provide the customer service that is expected. And with that position being the frontline position for calls, walk-ins, all of that, we feel like it's a very justified request to move that into a full-time position. The proposal before you tonight is not requesting additional funding, but requesting an allocation of monies already budgeted within our personnel line items. We presented this to the Park Board on December 12th. They were in full approval of this proposal, and as you can see in the staff report, there's a significant amount of savings through some transfer, some employee changeover, some turnover. So tonight we're asking that the part-time assistant go to a full-time position, and with that I'll answer any questions that you might have.
Thank you, sir. Any questions of staff? Ms. Abdel, go ahead.
Thank you. I just have a couple of questions. I was wondering, is this mostly to have a person always there when you walk in the door? Is it because this person has more responsibilities than he or she has time for in the amount of time she works? Or is it adding additional responsibilities to this position?
Mostly it's the first two. This is to make sure that we always have somebody answering the phones or greeting customers as they walk in. It also takes away the responsibility of scheduling the other full-time employees so that we're not always trying to manipulate our schedules to ensure that somebody's at that door. This will ensure that there's always somebody answering the phone and doing that. With that, having to accommodate that part-time, typically what happens is it overloads her morning when she shows up because now she's answering more emails, answering phone messages and things like that. So it will distribute her workload a little more evenly. It won't necessarily add additional work to her. It'll just allow her to do what she's currently being asked to do more efficiently.
Thank you, sir. Anyone else? Ms. Abdel, go ahead.
Follow-up question. So will this hopefully avoid things like phone messages, maybe calls being returned with a delay, or messages being passed from one employee to another employee to answer later? Will it clean up some of that messiness and efficiency, possibly?
Yes, ma'am. That's exactly what this request is targeted to eliminate and prevent.
Thank you, Mr. Holman.
Thank you, Mr. Mustine. In addition, when Greta, who currently has the part-time position, is unavailable or assigned to administrative tasks, I know she does a number of things such as the MISA soccer cards and things like that. Your other staff that has other duties have to fill in and take over such things as answering the phone and helping people there. So actually it's going to be more efficient distribution of duties across the board. Would you agree?
Yes, sir. It is our goal to always have two members of our staff in the facility at all times. So when Greta is not available or her hours are over for the week, it does require 2 other members to stay. So it allows some more flexibility and just overall workload for the department and as a whole.
And I would imagine it just makes sense that since you're moved from the old facility to the new facility, your walk-in traffic has doubled or even tripled.
Yes, sir. And at the old facility, we were able to partner with Public Works, with Melissa and Greta, to kind of coordinate those efforts. Now, that's just not available.
Absolutely. Okay. Any others? Mr. Barber?
This question has no bearing other than I'm just curious, and I couldn't find it anywhere. The person that currently has the part-time position, are they going to transition into full-time, or is this going to be a new person come in?
Yes, currently Greta Knabb, she is our part-time assistant, and she is ready and more than willing to take on this role. She sees the need, she has the workload, and she's fully committed to the department and is waiting for an approval.
Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else? Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
Anything else, Mr. Fearmore? No.
That concludes staff reports, sir.
Okay, thank you, sir. Then I would entertain a motion to dispose of Bill 3335.
Mr. Mayor, I move that we approve Bill 3335 for a budget amendment for a Parks Office Assistant.
I'll second the motion, sir.
Thank you. There's been a motion and a second to approve the first reading of Bill 3335. Any further discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor of the motion? Motion carries 7-0, 1 absent. Before we move into item I would ask for a motion for council recess from our regular meeting in order to convene the RAMAC board meeting. And then once we're completed with the RAMAC board meeting, we will reconvene our regular session to take on items 11 through 13. So I would entertain a motion to recess at this time.
Mr. Mayor, I move that the council recess this current meeting for a meeting of the RAMAC board, and we'll reconvene.
Thank you.
I'll second the motion, sir.
Motion's been made and seconded to move into a recess in order to convene the RAMAC board meeting. Any further discussion? All those in favor of the motion? Motion carries 7-0, 1 absent. We'll go ahead and move into the Raymore Municipal Assistance Corporation meeting. I'll call this meeting to order at 8:28 on January 8th, 2018. Could I please have the roll call?
Director Abdelgawad?
Here.
Director Barber?
Present.
Director Berenson?
Present.
Director Burke?
Present.
Director Holman?
Present.
Director Kellogg?
Present.
Director Moorhead? Absent. Director Townsend?
Present.
Director Turnbow?
Present. And the next item of our minutes is the approval of the minutes of the April 24th, 2017 meeting. Is there a motion to dispose of that?
Mr. Turnbow, I move that we approve the minutes from our April 24th, 2017 meeting.
I'll second the motion, sir.
Thank you. Motion been made and seconded to approve the April 24th, 2017 minutes. Any further discussion? All those in favor of the motion? Motion carries 7-0, 1 absent. Under new business, we have 5 items. Those resolutions, by the way, on your agenda packet are misnumbered. In the packet themselves, the numbers are accurate to reflect 2018-1 through 2018-5. If you please make that modification on your agenda, just to follow along, we'll go ahead and take on Resolution 2018-01, renaming of the Raymore Municipal Assistance Corporation. Is there a staff report?
Thank you, sir. I will call on Mr. Icky to make staff report.
Thank you, sir. Resolution 2018-01 effectively renames the Raymore Municipal Assistance Corporation to the Raymore Community Foundation. The new name will better reflect the purpose and spirit of the initiatives supported by the Future Foundation.
Thank you. Any questions of staff? Mr. Fearborn, do you have any comments on this particular item?
No, sir.
No? Okay. So I would ask for a motion to dispose of Resolution 2018-01.
Mr. Turnbow, I move that we approve Resolution 18-01, renaming the Raymore Municipal Assistance Corporation.
I'll second the motion, sir.
Motion has been made and seconded to approve Resolution 2018-01, the renaming of the Raymore Municipal Assistance Corporation. Any further discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor of the motion? Motion carries 7-0, one absent. That'll take us to Resolution 2018-02, amending the Articles of Incorporation. Is there a staff report, sir?
Thank you, Your Honor. Thank you, sir. I would call on Mr. Ike.
Okay.
Thank you, sir. By amending the Articles of Incorporation, staff is ensuring that the organization can legally collect donations of both real property and financial contributions. It also better defines the purpose to include if different proposed initiatives can be supported by the Future Foundation.
Thank you, Mike. Any questions of staff on this? Hearing none, is there a motion to dispose of Resolution 2018-02?
Mr. Turnbow, I move that we approve Resolution 1802, amending the Articles of Incorporation.
I'll second the motion, sir.
Thank you. Motion's been made and seconded to approve Resolution 2018-02, amending the Articles of Incorporation. Any further discussion? Any questions? Hearing none, all those in favor of the motion? Motion carries 7-0, one absent. That takes us to Resolution 2018-03, amending the bylaws of the Corporation Foundation. Mr. Fearborn, is there a staff report?
I would ask Mr. Ike to make a staff report on this item.
Okay.
Thank you, sir. By amending the bylaws, we are better reflecting the changes made in Resolution 2018-02, and we also expand the purpose of the Future Foundation. Amending the bylaws also clarifies that the seats on the board of directors are to be filled by the mayors and council members moving forward.
Thank you. Any questions of staff on that? Ms. Abdel, go ahead.
Thank you. Just a quick question, because we're kind of flying through this because we've had this conversation before. Can you remind anyone who wants more information, what was the date of the work session where we really talked this through?
I would need some quick assistance.
It's been a while with all the holidays. It was mid-December, right?
It was either the last work session of November or the first work session of December.
Okay, so I just
only work session.
Yeah.
wanted that date. In case people want more information, we're not having an in-depth discussion on this tonight, and people might be curious.
That's a good point.
Mr. Turnbow?
Thank you. Yes.
I can answer that question because I was watching it on TV. It was in December. It was December 11th. So.
Okay. Mr. Holman.
And just as a follow-up to that, the RAMAC Corporation's a long-standing corporation here embedded within the city, and its original purpose was to basically provide a funding mechanism. Is that correct, Mr. Fearborn?
That is correct. Would the council, for the sake of the public, like me to provide just a very brief synopsis?
Absolutely.
RAMAC was originally formed as an additional funding mechanism when the city was much smaller and we had very limited bonding capacity. RAMAC was formed in order to specifically fund park improvements and stormwater improvements when we could not go out for bonds to fund for those, whether they be revenue or general obligation. It did not matter. Very successful in their efforts, and we paid those bonds off last year, and so RAMAC became an organization that we recommended stay in place in order to perhaps address future needs of the city. This is a great future need of the city. It's going to allow for a much more comprehensive overview and oversight of people being able to make donations of a myriad of types to the city for a myriad of causes, and the mechanism is already in place. These resolutions change the purpose of the RAMAC board to the Raymore Community Foundation, change the bylaws of that group to better address what you all will be doing coming forward, and setting into place the policies for acceptance of donation, to first allowing city staff to go out and put into place the mechanisms with the IRS to make sure that everything is in place so that folks can do this, and then adopting the policy and guidelines that we will be advertising out to people for the ability to accept donations and how those donations would be used.
Correct. Thank you, sir. Mr. Holman.
So just a short synopsis. This is going to be the organization and structure to allow us to organize and operate our endowment fund. So people like me and Mr. Jones over there on the Arts Commission can go out and raise money to get the Boston Pops Orchestra to play here at Christmas next year, correct?
Correct, sir.
Thank you.
Thank you. If there's nothing else, is there a motion to dispose of Resolution 2018-03?
Mr. Turnbow, I move that we approve Resolution 18-03, amending the bylaws of the corporation/foundation.
I second the motion, sir.
Thank you. Motion been made and seconded to approve Resolution 2018-03. Any further discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor of the motion? Thank you. Motion carries 7-0, one absent. This takes us to Resolution 2018-04, directing staff to investigate and reestablish the corporation foundation's nonprofit status with the IRS. Sir, staff report.
Thank you, sir. I will have Mr. Zur begin, and then Mr. Icky will continue on.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Fairborn. Mr. Turnbow, it's a pleasure to be able to provide information with regard to this particular item, and I don't mean to steal Mr. Ickey's thunder with regard to his resolutions. I would simply note for you that at this time it would appear that in order for there to be any tax benefit for individuals who would donate to the foundation, we would need to go through a process for institution of a tax-exempt status. This would authorize the association to be able to, or the organization to do so. I would note for you that we may well come back before this fine board at some point or another if there is further requirements that might be imposed, either additional changes to the bylaws or other operating policies in the future in order to obtain that tax-exempt designation.
Okay, thank you. Questions of staff before we go to Mr. Ickey? Go ahead, Mr. Ickey.
Nothing more for me.
Nothing more for you? Okay. Anybody have questions of staff? If there are none, is there a motion to dispose of Resolution 2018-04?
Mr. Turnbow, I move that we approve Resolution 18-04, directing staff to investigate and reestablish the corporation's nonprofit status with the IRS.
I'll second the motion, sir.
Thank you. Motion's been made and seconded to adopt Resolution 2018-04. Any further discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor of the motion? Motion carries 7-0, one absent. And that'll move on to our last resolution, 2018-05, to adopt a policy guiding donations and disbursements. Mr. Fearborn?
Thank you, sir. I would ask Mr. Ickey to address this particular item and remind the council that while at the work session, we did indicate to you that we would be bringing this forward with the language to the 4 items. We encourage the council to possibly expand the thinking on that to a general fund that would allow for a broader base, although we think most of them would fit into one of these 4 categories in one way or the other. And the examples that we've been hearing from people wanting to early on think about this, a general fund category might be a good catch-all in case we needed it. With that, I will ask Mr. Ickey to make a report on this item.
Thank you, sir. The Raymore Community Foundation donation and disbursement policy really establishes for both the board as well as staff the thresholds and rules by which the organization will operate. In the first section, the foundation structure establishes, as Mr. Fearborn had mentioned, the 4 main categories in which we'll be collecting donations through the city, or through the foundation, I'm sorry, for various city initiatives. It also identifies and establishes that staff will be reporting on a quarterly basis all of the donations and disbursements made throughout any of these accounts that are created by the board. Under donations and the special donation request, this really gets into the heart of, as individuals begin donating to the foundation, We wanted to ensure that the donations, one, would be going to the areas in which they had intended, whether it be through the police department, the animal shelter, arts, or the parks, or a possible general fund. But also we wanted to establish some rules and some guidelines that would give staff direction when it comes to accepting, whether it's a small donation, a recurring donation, or even large one-time donations, how staff would manage those and how the board would be involved, whether that's in the actual acceptance of those donations or the disbursement of those donations. Number 3 and number 4 under the policy are mirrored directly from the city's current financial policies, which require certain purchases over $10,000 to be bid. Therefore, it seemed pretty natural to kind of create the policy in here that says that any disbursements for whether it be a capital project or a program of $10,000 or more to have to be approved by this board before then being approved by the city council. Any questions on the policies itself, I'm more than happy to answer.
Thank you, sir. Mr. Holman.
Well, the idea of donating to the city may seem foreign to some people. This actually will satisfy a demand of many people, as I remember the chief telling us she gets many requests each year, for example, to donate dog food to the animal shelter. Is that, that's correct? So actually people are asking to do this in certain areas, and this will provide the venue for them to be able to do that appropriately. Is that correct, sir?
Absolutely, and it'll also open up the ability to accept cash donations from individuals who have expressed a similar interest.
Outstanding.
And provide a tax benefit to those individuals that step up and make that donation.
Thank you.
Okay, anything else? If there's nothing else, is there a motion to dispose of Resolution 2018-05?
Mr. Turnbow, I move that we approve Resolution 18-05 to adopt a policy guiding donations and disbursements with the amendment adding item E under 1A to add the general fund.
I'll second that motion, sir.
Thank you. Motion been made and seconded to approve Resolution 2018-05 as amended. Any further discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor of the motion? Motion carries 7-0, one absent. Mr. Fearborn, do you have anything else to bring before us tonight under the RAMAC?
No, sir. Staff thanks the board for your actions.
Okay, thank you. So I would entertain a motion to adjourn from the RAMAC board meeting.
Mr. Turnbow, I move that we adjourn the RAMAC board meeting.
I'll second the motion, sir.
Motion's been made and seconded to adjourn. Any further discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor of the motion? Motion carries 7-0. We are adjourned. Mr. Zur, do I need to have a motion to reconvene the regular meeting?
I would suggest so, Your Honor.
Mr. Mayor, I move that we reconvene the Monday, January 8th City Council meeting.
I'll second the motion, sir.
Thank you. Motion's been made and seconded to reconvene our January 8th board meeting to address items 11 through 13. Any further discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor? Motion carries. We're not in closed session.
You didn't go to closed session.
So is that a yes? That's a yes. Okay, all right. Motion carries 7-0, one absent. So we'll move on to public comments under the board meeting. If anyone would like to address the council at this time, please step forward, state your name and address for the record, and keep your comments to 5 minutes or less. Anyone care to address the council at this time? If there are none, we'll move on to mayor and council communication. And I'll start with you, Mr. Holman.
Thank you, sir. One point of clarification, one item. Clarification, my colleague, my fine colleague from the great Ward 3 reminded me that I meant to say the Butler, Missouri Pops Orchestra, not the Boston Pops Orchestra. And I have one item tonight, and that is the theme is customer service. And I have to mention the outstanding customer service displayed to our citizens by staff in the past 2 weeks. I'm going to start with the very minor snow event that we had just prior to Christmas. And most of you probably noticed that Public Works went out and pre-treated with salt solution before that, and then again right after. A relatively light snow event. No problems. If you noticed, our streets look like, my term was the great salt flat, because they were white in nature, although there was no snow on them. But they were dry, curb to curb all across, and we had no issues due to weather. The same cannot be said for the jurisdictions around us. I drove out on Christmas Eve to go see Christmas in the Park, and there were dangerous icy spots in at least 4 other adjoining roadway authorities around here that I was a little fearful on driving. I didn't have any issues, but it just goes to show how much to heart Public Works takes that road work and our safety. And sir, I greatly appreciate that. Please pass that on to the remainder of staff. The second one would be to the staff over the past week during the trash changeover of vendors. We knew that there would be some bumps in the road. Perhaps we saw more than we anticipated. One would want to remember that that operation is much on the scale of a military move, if you will, because it not only involved our citizens and our staff, but the new vendor, as well as many subcontractors, those that provided the carts, et cetera, people learning the geography of our city. And we anticipate that getting much better from Mr. Fearborn's report. I witnessed a number of the instances with Mr. Icky and firsthand with Rachel out front. She had, even though she was on the phone, I could see the smile on her face. Very pleasant, treating our citizens extremely well. The highest quality of customer service I've seen across private or public entities. Mr. Fearborn, you and staff are certainly to be commended for that. I know they worked their tail off this week, and I for one, sir, greatly appreciate it. Thank you to all of our, 100 employees of the city, roughly. Thank you, thank you. A job well done.
Absolutely. Mr. Barber.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I wanted to recognize and congratulate Captain Wilson for a job well done. I bet and I don't think he's here, but if we were asking him who had more fun, I bet it was a tie between the kids and the cops that Shop with a Cop program. I'm very proud to be a councilman and have a police force like we do, and he's just one example. And Chief, you're a great leader too, but we can just go down the list. But very nice recognition. I was going to make a comment about his uniform getting heavier, but I don't want him to take that wrong. But it was nice to see his uniform get a little heavier too. That was neat. I'm going to reiterate what my Ward 3 counterpart here said. Mr. Fearborn, you and your staff, the dedication and hard work that you showed in the events that we've had this past couple of weeks, not only with the weather, but with the trash service, from this councilman does not go unnoticed, and it is greatly appreciated, and I thank you for that. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Ms. Abdelgawad.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. And I was obviously probably going to say the same thing as both of these two gentlemen. Thankful for Captain Jimmy Wilson and his work with Shop with a Cop. I also want to recognize the community, kind of to echo what he said, a 200% increase in the amount of kids we got to serve with that program, and that is based on his hard work, but also donations and cooperation from other police officers and people and businesses in the community who supported that program. So that's incredible. And also echo the thanks to city staff, everything I saw going out about what the changeover in the trash, even though hasn't been entirely smooth, it's been a bumpy road. You can't have that big of a change without some bumps in the road. But every communication from city staff that I've seen or heard about has been professional and positive, and that can be hard sometimes when people are nervous about changes or things that are happening. And so, Mr. Fearborn, please pass on to staff that we appreciate their professionalism and them and their work every day. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Berenson.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I also have to thank city staff for all their hard work on the trash service they've done this week. The professionalism has been outstanding, and just the way they've kept their cool. This could have kind of spiraled out of control and been a bigger deal than it was, and they kept everything nice and calm, and I think the professionalism really showed throughout the week. I want to thank Mr. Fearborn for a staff report on trash that was very thorough. I was amazed that nobody had any questions or comments afterwards. It just goes to speak to how professional and how thorough you were there. Chief Zimmerman, thank you for your report tonight. Glad to see that there is some reduction in the accidents that we're seeing over the years. Always happy to hear any recommendations from the police department to keep those numbers going down as well. One little thing, I was watching the police blotter like I always do, and I saw that we pulled somebody over, and the officer noticed that there was a package in the car that wasn't addressed to him. And so we, I think it was a man and wife or a male and female, but we inadvertently caught 2 package thieves here in Raymore. And I like seeing us catch criminals, but catching a package thief just has this very satisfying thing. So thank you very much. Please pass that on. That was fantastic.
Yeah. We're looking for packages, I guess.
Yeah. Looking forward to the playground recommendations for Hawkwood Park from the Park Board. And finally, we'll welcome Greta to full-time over at next door.
Yep.
Thank
That'll
you,
be
Mr.
great
Mayor.
for them. Yep, I agree. Thank you, sir. Mr. Burke.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I wanted to thank Public Works for this morning's road treatment. I have a new licensed driver in my house, and I have 2 vehicles that need sandbags, and for different reasons. But we drove this morning, the licensed driver, my son drove with me on the way to school, and I drove, I just basically showed him how you should drive when you don't know if there's black ice in the roads, and it was really kind of unnecessary because there was so much salt and things on the road that it was really great this morning. So appreciate that. I wanted to thank the staff for developing the policy on private infrastructure. We had struggled with different things in the past couple years with different requests, and because of that process, it made me think about some things in my job at the school district where there are times that students are asking us for advice on different aspects of our district and how they get into programs, and it came to my realization that there was no policy or procedure on how a student was to go about this particular thing. So I went to one of the assistant superintendents and talked to them and said, you know, and so we talked about the fact that it was their understanding that there was a policy in place because it was in existence when they were hired, and so now some work's being done using that same kind of methodology to improve things for our students and parents. And that probably that would not have popped into my head that way had we not gone through this here with the city. So that really helped me to help students. And I wanted to also thank Jim Peterman for dressing up for adding a little levity to our meeting this morning, or to this evening. It's been a long day. But my comments about pigs were hoping to challenge him to run out of the room and come back in a pig costume, but to no avail. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Townsend.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I also want to echo comments of the dais as well with respect to Captain Wilson and the Shop with the Cop. Outstanding. Having been in the Marine Corps and supporting Torch for Tots, and seeing how the Shop with the Cop within the city is equally outstanding, supporting our community, as well as Public Works. Again, good job on keeping our city streets safe for our citizens. I'm going to take a different turn with respect to our trash pickup this time. I do want to echo the sentiments of the staff and of the citizens who called in to voice their concerns, and our staff's response to supporting them and letting them know the information with respect to that. But I want to be specific to Jim's disposal. This was not new. This was expected. We knew the size of our city. We knew it was necessary to get the carts out for our city. It was their business to pick up trash. It's logistics. The contract was known for months, but you could have come out and did some dry runs to figure out how much time it took to pick up the trash, how much time it would take to deliver the bins. So this is the second week that's upcoming to pick up our trash. Our city is taking pride in the cleanliness of our city. We have another expected weather event that's supposed to be coming up during the trash pickup again. So it's going to be round 2 of having weather as well as on top of picking up our trash. You advertised and you proposed I would just use a loose term, you offered us a Jack Stack meal, but you delivered us a Steak and Shake #1. Here's round 2. You have another opportunity to start out to set the record, to set the conditions to be successful in our city. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Okay, thank you, sir. Mr. Kellogg.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I'd like to commend staff. I've been out of town. The mayor knows this. Many of my colleagues do also. I've been out of town I came back a week ago now. I think it's about a week now I've been back. I spent 2 weeks in Texas. And I got there and they had snow long before we did. When I left there, they were treating for ice and snow on the bridges, actually. So it wasn't any piece of cake down in Texas when I got there. But anyway, when I came back, first thing I saw, I'm extremely happy to be back. When I first came back, I saw a new sign coming into the city with a new logo and a new population there. And I think it said 20,111. Am I correct? Yeah, okay, we'll go with it.
We'll go with that.
Close. We finally broke 20,000, and then I'm reading the agenda and the mark thing, and I believe that's $1.05 per resident, right? My math comes up a little bit different. Yeah, I read it. It's $1.05. But anyway, my math's coming up that I'm $764.40 short on that. So maybe my figures down on the sign may be wrong, but I don't know. But anyway, it's good to be over that 20,000. It's good to see the new signs. And also, I'm going to echo what I heard tonight. I don't know who said it. I think it was Mr. Burke that said it. Many of my colleagues, my coworkers at work that don't have the privilege of living in Raymore drive through Raymore, and they notice that it was very smooth, they had traction. They didn't have that outside. So, that observation was made to me today at work and that. And I'm like, well, come to Raymore, come home to more, we got more better streets. So, anyway, then I guess I need to correct myself. Director Abdelgawad, I finally got it right. She asked a question tonight when we had a discussion for the foundation when we did that. I was out of town for that. That was December 18th. I told you December 11th. I apologize. I was wrong. I went back and looked at it. It's December 18th. That's when that meeting took place. So I go ahead and clear that up. Then also, I would like to thank, not congratulate, but thank, because Jimmy Wilson, that's Jimmy Wilson, and he's very well deserving, and thank you, Chief, for recognizing him. That is huge. Again, not congratulate him because I don't think he likes that, but I definitely want to thank him for everything. That's not the only thing he does. It's not the only thing he does. And if there's any recognizable, if there's any 3 recognizable cops in this city, one just retired, Dale Loney, that the kids know, Jimmy Wilson's number 1, Ali Abdelgawad's number 2, and then Dale Loney, they're just, so I commend that, and I encourage you to keep doing that with all of our police. When they do something like that, bring them in and introduce them to the public, I think it's great, I hated to see us lose Dale, but I'm also glad that he was able to retire. There was one night, I believe you were chief then, that things could have been very different for our police officers, particularly Officer Loney. So it's good to see him be able to retire. And it's great to get to know him and all of that. Congratulations, Dale, on your retirement. Enjoy it. And I guess that's all I got, Mayor. So
thank you.
Thank you.
All right, thanks. Well, I can't really add anything to the accolades in one wrist slap that we got tonight that went on. Over the past week, Mr. Feuerborn and I have talked to each other off the ledge on a couple of occasions with regard to the trash pickup and the logistics concerning that, but we both reassured one another that we would get through it, and I think they will step up to the plate. I'm hoping so, and that they get it right now that everything's been distributed and in place, and they take your sage advice on the routing possibilities. I think they'll do well for themselves. Captain Wilson, he goes without saying, He was here when I got here in '99. He's still here, and he's a tremendous asset to the Raymore Police Department. I was happy to provide that proclamation tonight. And then the other thing that didn't go unnoticed to me at all, and probably to our residents, is that 2 years ago when I was out campaigning, I heard from several people that knew developers or home builders and said, you know, you guys are so strict, they're never going to build here in your town again. Well, obviously that's not the case. 287 permits in 2017. It's nearly 50 or 60 more from my count, more than the previous year. So obviously we're doing something right. People want to live here. Developers, builders want to build here. And I am so proud to be a part of that expansion and development of our community, not to mention what economic development is doing and about to explode in. So it is an exciting time, as Mr. Holman likes to say, about our city and where it's going. And it is due in part not only to a great team of elected officials, but a wonderful staff that we have to work with. So thank you all for that. And with that, I will, we don't have any reason to go into executive session, do we?
We had executive session posted on the agenda, sir, at my request. Wiser heads and sager advice has led me to request that the council not go into executive session this evening.
Okay. All right. So we have no reason to go into executive session. So I'd ask for a motion to adjourn.
Mr. Mayor, I move that we adjourn.
I'll second the motion, sir.
Motion been made and seconded. We adjourn. Any further discussion? Hearing none. All those in favor of the motion? Motion carries 7-0. One absent. We are adjourned. Thank you.